Hello, I'm Susan Ilian and welcome to the World News Today. Starting off, fresh smoke trails from explosions could be seen over the skies of Kyiv at dawn after Ukrainian officials said Russia had launched a barrage of 15 cruise missiles on the capital this morning. Officials said that local air defense systems had managed to shoot off all the Russians' missiles down. Tuesday's attacks, the 5th of May, come a day after Russia launched its biggest drone swarm yet in a renewed air campaign unleashed 10 days ago after a lull since early March. The attack also came on Russia's Victory Day, one of its most commemorated public holidays, marking the anniversary of the defeat of Nazi Germany in 1945. A three-day curfew in the Ukrainian city of Kherson ended early on Monday afternoon, another night of explosions. The local military administration had introduced the curfew as a safety measure, saying shelling from the Russian-controlled territory across the Dnipro River had increased. Russian fire wounded 8 people, including a 9-year-old boy in 2 villages in the region. 2 were hurt in Antonivka on Kherson's outskirts. Ukrainian troops recaptured the city last November after nearly 8 months of occupation by Russian troops who seized it soon after launching their full-scale invasion. The area now comes under frequent artillery fire from Russian forces dug in on the opposite side of the Dnipro River. The head of Russia's mercenary Wagner group says his troops have started to receive the ammunition they need and reported heavy fighting in the eastern Ukrainian city of Bakhmut. In an audio message posted online, he claimed the groups advanced a maximum of 130 meters amid fierce fighting, but the groups are continuing to advance. And European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen arrived in Kyiv for talks with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Von der Leyen was met at the station by Ukrainian Deputy Foreign Minister Yevhen Perebinis. Brussels marks May 9 as Europe Day, honoring a French declaration in 1950 that led to the founding of the body that became the EU. Ukraine used the holiday marking the Allied victory over Nazi Germany on that day, in line with Russia, but moved to change the date to May 8 on Monday to reflect the practice of Western allies. Zelensky said he wanted May 9 to become Europe Day instead.
Tomorrow, the president will be in Kyiv, Ukraine, where she will meet President Volodymyr Zelensky and reaffirm the EU's unwavering support towards the country. As you will, of course, have noticed, this visit will take place on Europe Day. In this context, we warmly welcome the announcement by President Zelensky that the 9th of May will from now on also be celebrated as Europe Day in Ukraine.
Kremlin says marking Victory Day is on May 9 and is still sacred for many people in Ukraine. The statement came after the Ukraine's president, Volodymyr Zelensky, said he had submitted a bill to Parliament, officially making May 8 a day of remembrance and victory, while May 9, when Russia usually marks Victory Day, would become Europe Day. Asked about Zelensky's plan at a daily news briefing, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said there are veterans there, too, who took part in the Great Patriotic War, and their relatives for whom this day is and will remain sacred. For Russia, May 9 is one of its most important national events, a remembrance of the enormous sacrifices made by the Soviet Union in defeating Nazi Germany. Soviet Russia and Soviet Ukraine sustained appalling loss of life in the war. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte said he will lay out the need to defend Ukraine in the war with Russia today when he meets Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who has been critical of arming the Ukrainians. Rutte said he will explain to Lula why the question of backing Ukraine is existential for the Netherlands, for Europe, and beyond, because the Russian invasion has put Western values at stake. Lula, who has tried to encourage countries who are not involved in the conflict to form a group to push for peace talks, has said supplying arms to Ukraine was encouraging the war. The U.S. government accused him of parroting Russian and Chinese propaganda. The Dutch government is considering donating F-16 fighter jets to Ukraine with its European partners. But according to Lula, the agreement was first needed between all the partners, as they had done in the past before supplying Panzer howitzers and Leopard tanks to Ukraine. Ruta is on a 3-day visit accompanied by a business delegation for talks focusing on trade and cooperation for sustainable agriculture and the energy transition, especially hydrogen.
If Putin would be successful in Kyiv, in Ukraine, and I don't think he will, but let's assume for a moment that he might be successful. Again, I don't predict it. I think he will not be successful. But if he still will be successful, it won't end there. So it is also existential for our own safety, for our own security. And people are worried. In Amsterdam, in the Netherlands, in Berlin, in Paris, in Europe, are worried about what is happening in Ukraine.
Ukraine's largest steel producer, ArcelorMittal Kryvyi Rih, says it has told employees to take Tuesday, that's today, off or work remotely because of the threat of Russian air raids. Now, the company, which employs approximately 20,000 people, is located in the central city of Kryvyi Rih, President Volodymyr Zelensky's hometown, and has often been the target of Russian drone and missile attacks. The spokesperson said the measure reflected the escalation of enemy attacks nationwide and the downing of a reconnaissance drone in Kryvyi Rih on Saturday. Moscow has intensified air raids this month as Ukraine prepares to launch a counteroffensive against Russia's invasion. It has also promised to retaliate after blaming Kyiv for an apparent drone attack on Moscow's Kremlin citadel, for which Ukraine denied responsibility. Italy says it strongly recommends any of its citizens still in Ukraine to leave the country by any means. The country's foreign ministry issued an alert in the wake of ever heavier missile attacks on Kyiv and across all Ukrainian territory. Ukraine's largest steel producer, ArcelorMittal Kryvyi Rih, says it has told employees to take Tuesday, and that's today, off or work remotely because of the threat of Russian air raids. The company, which employs approximately 20,000 people, is located in the central city of Kryvyi Rih, President Volodymyr Zelensky's hometown, and has often been the target of Russian drone and missile attacks. The spokesperson said the measure reflected the escalation of enemy attacks nationwide and the downing of a reconnaissance drone in Kryvyi Rih on Saturday. Moscow has intensified air raids this month as Ukraine prepares to launch a counteroffensive against Russia's invasion. It has also promised to retaliate after blaming Kyiv for an apparent drone attack on Moscow's Kremlin citadel, for which Ukraine denied responsibility. And joining me now is Voice of America's correspondent, Anna Cherkinova. Anna, how are you? Thank you for joining us. Now, give us the latest on what the situation is at this moment.
Good evening. Well, Ukraine survived another missile attack. This time it was another tough night, especially for the citizens of Kyiv and for the citizens of east part of the country. What I can tell, for the moment, situation is okay. So it's just another, unfortunately for Ukrainians, another after attack, so after tough night day and after attack day, and the life is back ongoing as much as it's possible to be. But of course, of course, it was quite a tough night, and at around 10 o'clock in the evening yesterday, 8 missiles were targeting eastern part of the country. All of them were destroyed. At 4 o'clock in the morning, the air raid alarm was on again, and the main target this time was the city of Kyiv, the capital. And at least 14 missiles were targeting the city of Kyiv alone. What we know that in total, 23 out of 25 missiles were destroyed over the night, and evening. Unfortunately, for the moment, we don't have any official confirmations regarding these 2 missiles, if they hit any particular targets and where did they land. But in Kyiv, I can tell that it was quite loud for 2 hours at least, from 4 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock in the morning. It was a very active air defense in action, very active work of the air defense, and explosions were quite loud when the missiles were destroyed. There are some damages due to the debris fall, but in general, luckily, no victims or casualties or injured were reported. So there are some damages of the private area and road surface.
Okay, Anna, there's a lot of back and forth now. I'm hoping you can maybe shed some light. The ammunition confusion. Is the head of Russia's mercenary Wagner group, Yevgeny Prigozhin, full of empty threats? Is he mentioning this ammunition fiasco because he wants to regroup, but he fears it looks like he's retreating? Like, how seriously should we take his tantrum, if you will?
Well, I think we should wait and see and follow what's going on, but we should be very careful with any analysis or any predictions, because this looks pretty much like certain internal negotiations and internal, let's say, tactical work within the Russian forces, different Russian forces. And of course, it's difficult to independently verify and confirm what's really going on. For the moment, what we can see that no one is leaving Bakhmut, so nor Ukrainian officials, neither Ukrainian nor international intelligences or officials confirm that Wagner group or any other military section of the Russian forces have left Bakhmut. So this is not confirmed, and Ukrainian general staff report that actually Russian forces had certain advance in that area. So for the moment, there is no neither confirmation nor any any signs that any of the military groups might leave. So I suggest it's just time now to wait and see, because it looks pretty much, for the moment, it looks like some internal things going on between Russian forces.
And Anna, still on the topic of ammunition, Russia's parliamentary group Wagner had threatened to halt its offensive in Bakhmut unless Moscow did deliver more ammunition. Wagner now says Moscow has promised it will deliver, and just want to get your thoughts on that, what the effect on the ground would be.
Well, if we imagine, again, as I already said, we should wait and see, because for the moment, it looks like certain internal, relations between them. But if we imagine that Wagner Group leaves because there is no ammunition provided, it would be a fiasco, of course, for Russian forces, because it looks like Wagner Group have the most success, especially in certain directions in that area. At least this is, again, reported by the Ukrainian officials and also confirmed by the Institute for the Study of War. So this is something that we can see from the ground and we can analyze from the ground. If we imagine that, well, and again, it's difficult to predict, because one day the leader of Wagner Group reports that ammunition issue was fixed, and then next day he again reports that it might be another problem or another misunderstanding. So I think that it's like let's wait and see, and it's difficult to predict. But again, theoretically, if it happens, it's not going to be a great sign and great thing for Russian forces in that area, because it's almost a year. It's more than 7 months that Russian forces are trying to take control of the city of Bakhmut in full, and for the moment, Ukrainian forces remain their defense positions, even despite some advances and some success from Russian forces.
And moving on to President Putin's speech today, Victory Day. What was the tone of the president on Russia's Victory Day holiday?
Well, I think that we didn't really hear anything new. So President Putin just follows his messages and continue to present his messages about Russia being a victim of the Western and Ukrainian coalition, and so on and so forth. However, I actually heard some slightly new messages, slightly new message that coming in front of everything else. So if previously President Putin was always telling that this so-called special military operation is a preventive operation in order to protect Russia, today he was saying, so his message was built around the fact that Russia was actually attacked and this real war is happening against Russia. So this slightly change of angle of this message, even it remains the same. It's an interesting fact, and again, we will see how this rhetorics would be either developed in something new or something else, or will be transformed, or will just get back to the previous rhetoric. But definitely Russia is trying to put certain parallels between Second World War and the war they've started in Ukraine, which is still ongoing, and trying to present Russia as a hero that tries to, avoid conflicts, avoid wars, avoid killing people, and so on and so forth, and making Russia a victim. But unfortunately, this is something that, this is something that we see from the very beginning of this full-scale phase of war. And from the very beginning in 2014, it was also one of the main messages in Mr. Putin's and Russian official rhetoric in terms of protection of land and protection of Russia as of the motherland. So and definitely it was just yet another speech. This pretty patriotic speech with just needed messages provided to to Russian nation, but again, this was the shortest in history parade in Russia, which also creates certain new circumstances.
Well, it seems that the president has sought to connect the two conflicts on Victory Day, the Ukraine war with the Soviet triumphs over Nazi Germany. What do you make of that, Anna?
Again, this is the message, and this was from the very beginning when President Putin announced this so-called special military operation in February last year. He said that so there is Nazism in Ukraine, fascism and Nazism in Ukraine, which Russia will fight. And again, his message today in terms of Second World War is the same, that Russia was fighting Nazism, and now it's like a second chapter, or whatever he sees it, But again, this is just. This is just the rhetoric which is not new, and yet again, President Putin confirms and reassures his nation again that everything is going according to plan. But their rhetorics and their goals are changing all the time. I mean, Russian goals, and it's really difficult to follow what is the current goal right now, because there is no particular goal of this war, or as they call it, special military operation. So I think we just have to follow this rhetorics and take this rhetorics as it is, and it's not changing for the past. Unfortunately, it's not changing for the past 9 years since 2014.
And would you say it's accurate to say that Russia marked today's Victory Day with new waves of attacks on Ukrainian troops?
Nothing was reported extraordinary was reported from the front line, so I cannot confirm that any escalations were happening following this 9th of May date. And Ukrainian General Staff just had another report kind of putting together all the frontline activities, and basically the main action, the main battlefield and the main action areas remain the same. It's east and south of the country, but of course this overnight attack, it was let's put it this way, it was not the biggest one in history of this full-scale invasion, and for Kyiv as well, but it was quite big, and it was quite let's say it was quite quite different from previous attacks when only drones were used or a smaller amount of missiles were used. So maybe Russian forces were trying to create a certain image of massive attack because of the date of the 9th of May. But again, I would not really make it as a reason, because basically for the past 2 weeks, every night Ukraine wakes up because of the either drone or missile attack, and to be honest, it doesn't matter if it's 17 missiles or 10 missiles. The risks remains very high, and emotional and physical pressures that Russia is trying to put on Ukrainian society with such night attacks, of course, remains the same. So I don't think that 9th of May created any additional risks or anything like that.
And my final question to you, Anna, we've heard that Russia wants to effectively stop the grain initiative by refusing to register incoming vessels. Now, this isn't the first time that they've had, really caused delays on this, is it?
Yeah, it's not the first time. We already experienced these problems, and Turkey and UN were were negotiating, because I would just remind that this agreement, there are 2 agreements, that one was signed by Ukraine with UN and Turkey, and another one was signed by Russia with UN and Turkey. So Ukraine did not sign anything with Russia directly, and what we can see that Russia had already discussions and certain problems appearing with this deal with Turkey and UN, and of course now what we can see that the shipment is blocked, so the vessels are blocked in the transport corridor, and as was announced by Turkey officials, this upcoming days, it will be a meeting between UN, Turkey, Ukraine, and Russia in order to again try to find certain point for this agreements to get back to work. But again, the main problem is that Russia is trying to add additional conditions to these agreements and try to find additional advantages for itself. So again, we will have just to wait and see what would be the main points of these negotiations, which is happening, if I'm not mistaken, tomorrow and after tomorrow. So this upcoming days might change something or might not. So hopefully, of course, it would be some sort of discussion at least going on. So we will see, because of course everyone is interested for this agreement to continue to work.
All right, Anna, thank you so very much. Keep safe out there.
Thank you.